So I ended up joining another game jam. I thought this was going to be a 3-day game jam when I first was joining it, but it turns out it was a week-long game jam. Oh well, I have time this week to actually work on this game. So this jam has a theme and a wildcard, but the wildcards appear to be optional, so I might just stick to the theme for this one. The theme is something's missing. I thought about it for a while, and I'm still not sure exactly what I want to make. Maybe I'll need to brainstorm a bit more. So of the ideas I have, there are color-based games with 2 primary colors, and the third one's missing. Possibly a platformer without a jump, a puzzle game where pieces go missing, maybe a space shooter, you don't have a gun. I'm not really sure I'm feeling any of these ideas, like I was with the last game jam, so I'll have to think a bit more. Okay, so I thought about it a bit more, and I'm probably going to make a platformer. So I'll just get started on that and see where I go from there. So initially when I started making this platformer, I was thinking I would make kind of a traditional platformer, and then you would need go get some oregano, which is one of the wildcards. I might not even have oregano in this, I'll decide later. But anyway, so you'd have oregano missing from your cupboard, so you'd have to go pick that up at the store or something, and you have to do a traditional platformer. But then I ended up working on it for a bit, and I decided to make something completely different. Basically, the thing that's missing is gravity. So you need to push yourself off the walls. If you're against a wall, you can move across the wall and push yourself off it. You can also do both. If you aren't touching a wall, you have no gravity, no friction, you're just floating off. I'm not sure exactly what I want to do with this mechanic because right now it feels like you could go anywhere on the map and it's not really difficult in any way. I ended up implementing some basic art into this game to make it feel more alive. It's really simple, but I like it. And with quite a bit more work, I ended up creating a system where I could draw, and it'll create the map. This took me a lot longer than I'd like to admit, and I also decided that I would like to make so that there are some walls without friction. So I also needed to add that into it. So basically, you can't climb across the walls or push off them if they don't have friction, but they do stop you. I feel like adding this in will allow the player to have areas that are harder to get to and some areas that I could make impossible to get to unless he takes a different route. The next thing I ended up implementing was a key mechanic. It's very similar to the previous game, you pick it up and you can open a door. However, this one was harder to implement because I needed to make sure that the player doesn't lose their momentum when they hit the door. In the other game it didn't matter because you could keep moving around after you open the door. But in this game, because you don't have friction or any control over your character, you need him to continue gliding through after he hits the door. In order to do this, I basically just made so that the collider on the door was a specific layer that the player would drop if he had a key and pick up if he didn't have a key. So that was pretty fun. I'm going to try and make some more levels with these 2 mechanics, see if I could get some good level design going. So after creating a couple more levels, I'm not really finding the main mechanic that fun. It just feels to get very stale very quick. It feels like a puzzle game that I can't seem to make hard. You just look around and you could see, oh, I could go there, or I could go there. And if I made so that the map was bigger, so you couldn't see where you was going to, then it's just a guess and check, so I don't like that. So I'm going to look into possibly changing how this mechanic works. So I thought about it a bit more, and I actually ended up removing something from this mechanic. When you jump off of a wall, it would always stop your momentum in the opposite direction. That way you would do a straight jump. I decided I would get rid of that, so that you could do an angle jump, and this will allow you to jump into places and not be able to get out of them. I'll definitely need to still focus on some level design concepts to figure out how I want to utilize this mechanic, but I feel like it gives the player more freedom in how they want to move, which will allow me to make harder levels. So after implementing that, I found one thing that I don't necessarily like. Basically, if you try jumping in a corner, then because you're touching both walls, you jump off both walls and you go super quick at a 45-degree angle. I'm not currently seeing how I would remove this. Maybe I just leave it in, but I don't know, some levels it makes interesting. I could also just make so that there are no corners in the level design and you just jump from wall to wall. I'll have to decide on that. Other than that, I think this mechanic is a lot better than the previous one. Yes, some level design that I already made doesn't work that well with this because you could just bypass large sections, but it still has defined rules in areas that you can go and areas that you can't, which will allow me to make certain levels with the level design. One example of places you can't go is on the level that weaves back and forth, kind of like a snake. You have to follow the path even with this more complex movement system that allows you to move more freely, you can't fit in some of the gaps. So you have to follow the path. So I designed a couple more levels, and I'm thinking I'm actually liking this mechanic a lot more than the other. So it makes it feel less of a puzzle game, and I'm actually fine with that. It's now more a mechanics-based game that requires skill-ish. It's still pretty simple, but I'm liking it. So at this point in time, I have about 3 or 4 more days until the game jam actually ends, but I did join a game jam with a group of friends for this next weekend. I didn't think this one would overlap because I thought it was 3 days, but I'm gonna end this one here, call it good, submit it, and then go do that other game jam. I might make changes a little bit, but not really for the most part. Thanks for watching that video. If you liked it, let me know, and I'll see you in the next one.